At the same time, it had an implementation plan. We also developed a food fortification strategy and an advocacy and communication strategy for nutrition. So those strategies really acted as a high-level anchor for all stakeholders to utilize when approaching nutrition. We hopefully expecting by the end of this year, we should have an act of food security and nutrition passed in the parliament. We have now endorsed last week an interministerial council for food systems and nutrition. So this is really part of what we have been learning from the SUN approach. We can do a lot, but slowly, but we can do together much faster.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. May we please be seated? We have a few more people coming in. Good afternoon. I would like to welcome us all to this session. We have dignitaries here with us. We have excellencies and honorables. You all are very much welcome. Thank you so much for your presence for this high-level event. We have some greetings still happening. I'm going to wait for everyone to for the room to settle so that we can begin the session, so we can start and end on time. All right, everyone, let's begin. Once again, good afternoon and welcome to this session. We have dignitaries here with us. We have excellencies. We have honorable ministers. We have distinguished delegates. We also have partners and stakeholders, and we have my colleagues, members of the press. Thank you all for being here this beautiful afternoon. This high-level event is being organized in collaboration with the federal government of Somalia, the African Union Commission, the African Union Nutrition Champions Program, and the African Development Bank, as well as the African Leaders for Nutrition Initiative of the African Development Bank. My name is Chika Odua. I'll be your moderator for this high-level program. And this session is all about one particular thing. This session is all about stressing the need to integrate nutrition in climate change financing. It's very important. Many of you are very familiar with the complex interplay between nutrition and climate change, and the numbers speak for themselves. If I can share some statistics, around the world, 2 billion people face the challenges of micronutrient deficiency. 828 million people are undernourished around the world, and 676 million people suffer from obesity. So these are the numbers. And at this event, you will hear recommendations on how nutrition can be integrated into the climate change financing framework. We will have a panel session, and then we will have a position paper that will be presented on this very theme of financing. So once again, thank you all for being here. This event is also being live streamed on the African Development Bank's online platform. And also, if we can have a conversation going on social media, if you hear anything interesting, please feel free to tweet it with the hashtag. We're using the hashtags Africa at COP28, as well as the hashtag AU. So please, let's get a conversation going on social media. So to kick things off, let's hear some opening remarks. At this time, I would like to kindly invite to the stage Dr. Luaulu Garba. He is the manager of the Agricultural Production, Sustainability, and Research Division at the African Development Bank. Let's please welcome him forward to the stage.
Is yours, okay. Okay, Excellency, Madame la Commissioner in charge of Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, Professor Nkoza Mahoya, Minister for Energy representing His Majesty King Leslie III of the Kingdom of Lesotho and African Union Nutrition Champion, representative from the United Arab Emirates, representative from Union Agency, representative from the Children Investment Fund Foundation, other partners present, distinguished guests. I want to thank the Federal Republic of Somalia for organizing this event during this COP28. I would also like to appreciate stewardship of the government of the United Arab Emirates for hosting the COP28 and bringing together representatives from actors committed to addressing and reversing the negative impact of climate change on human life. Climate change is a significant driver of malnutrition, affecting availability, access, and nutritional quality food. The complex interaction between climate change and malnutrition highlights the urgent need for comprehensive and integrated approaches that address both challenges simultaneously. Effort to mitigate and adapt to climate change, enhance agriculture resilience, promote sustainable food system, and improve access to nutritious food are critical to combating climate-induced malnutrition and achieving global health and development goals. Although climate change is a global phenomenon, its impacts are being felt disproportionately across the world. The United Nations Environment Programme estimates that costs associated with climate change adaptation across Africa could hit billion US dollar annually by 2050, even if the temperature does not rise by more than the 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level. Under the Paris Agreement, all countries committed to undertake action to hold the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius pre-industrial level and optimally to more than 1.5. African countries have outlined bold aspiration to build climate resilient and low carbon economy in their nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. Building partnership across the agri-food, nutrition, and climate communities and the humanitarian development continuum are key to finding innovative solutions to tackle the main drivers of hunger and malnutrition in Africa. We are gathered here to examine ways to promote the integration of nutrition into the climate change financing framework by exchanging ideas on how African countries can effectively allocate funds within the National Development Contribution, NDC, to address climate-induced malnutrition while mitigating immediate climate change. impact and ensuring long-term health and well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the African Development Bank has developed new initiatives to scale up the volume of finance mobilized and improve operational efficiency. Through its new climate action window, the bank is focused on mobilizing climate finance for adaptation and mitigation in Africa. With several commitments already announced, our long-term goal is to mobilize additional $5 billion per year to scale up climate action in Africa. At the same time, the bank is promoting the development of green bank in the continent to mobilize adaptation finance through the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program in partnership with the Global Center on Adaptation. The bank is committed also to championing climate change and green growth, and to ensure that development across the continent drives growth that is not only economically empowering, but also decarbonized, climate-friendly, environmentally sustainable, and socially inclusive. During this COP28 meeting, the bank announces the creation of the Africa Climate Risk Insurance Quality Facility for Adaptation, ACRIFA, that aim to mobilize $1 billion of concessionary financing, high-risk capital, and grant for the African insurance industry to support more than 40 million farmers across the continent against several impacts of climate change. The bank recognizes the critical role political discourses has played in ensuring the development and implementation of climate-friendly policies. In the month leading up to its annual meeting, the African Development Bank engaged in the broader political discourses by feeding strategic climate-related messaging into milestone policy discussions, such as during the Feed Africa Dakar 2 Summit, the UN 2003 Water Conference, and the Governor Global Conference. During the Dakar 2 Summit, African countries presented their respective food and agriculture delivery compact to achieve food sufficiency and nutrition for Africa within the next 5 years. The bank and the African Union, through the African Leaders for Nutrition, ALN, is working with political leaders to ensure that resources from climate finance are channeled to address nutrition across sectors such as agriculture, health, education, water, sanitation, and social protection. The bank welcomed the COP28 Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food System, and Climate Action, which will help in strengthening food systems, building resilience to climate change, reducing global emissions, and contributing to the global fight against hunger in Africa, which align with the UN Sustainable Development Goal. Our expectation is that the declaration will boost the implementation of the bank and African countries' ongoing initiative for food sovereignty and resilience under the Dakar 2 agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, today we are launching a position paper on the link between nutrition and climate change, especially how we, as stakeholders, can tap into the climate change finance framework to address the nutritional needs of our communities. We have conducted extensive research and analysis to highlight the impact of climate change on food security and nutrition in Africa. Through this position paper, we propose innovative strategies and policies that can be integrated into the climate change financing framework to ensure sustainable and nutritious food system for all. Within the collaboration and commitment of all stakeholders, we can create a healthier and more resilient future for our planet and its inhabitants. Let us all join hands and rally political and financial commitment at the all level to address climate-induced malnutrition and food insecurity in Africa. Thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garba. You have given us some worthy food for thought to open up this session. Once again, I would like to remind us all that this event is being organized by the federal government of Somalia, the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, the African Leaders for Nutrition Champions. So at this time, I'd like to recognize some dignitaries and distinguished delegates that we have from the federal government of Somalia. If I may just call upon Minister for Livestock Forestry, the Honorable Hassan Hussein Mohammed. Thank you very much for your attendance, sir. We really appreciate it. Also, Deputy Minister for Agriculture, Saha Yusuf Ege. Thank you very much for your presence. We really appreciate it. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call upon some more opening remarks. And I'd like to kindly request to the stage the presence of Her Excellency, Minata Samate Sesuma, the African Union Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs, and Social Development. Can we please welcome her to the stage with a round of applause? Her Excellency has been a tireless advocate for nutrition and especially ensuring that nutrition is accessible for all, including vulnerable communities. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Thank you, moderator. I will request you to take your, how do you call it, because I will go in French. My speech is in English. She was asking me, your speech is in English, but I would like to go in French. Professor Nkosa Mahao, Minister of Energy of the Kingdom of Lesotho, representing our champion, His Majesty the King of Lesotho. Thank you, Minister, for being with us, and I salute the engagement of the King in the matter of nutrition. His Excellency Hassan Hussein Mohammed, Minister of Somalia, and also I recognize Ahmed Matobe Nunao, Minister of Agriculture of the Federal Republic of Somalia, Dr. Martin Fregen, Director of Agriculture and Agro-Industry at the African Development Bank, Madam Afshan Khan, Coordinator of the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, distinguished representative of international organization, partners and civil society organization, ladies and gentlemen, I will say all protocol duly observed. Bonsoir. Bonsoir.
Hello, I'm a commissioner for health, humanitarian affairs, and social development. I can say it is an honor for me to take part in this significant event and to take the floor on the issue of climate change, and more specifically related to the funding of nutrition for this COP28. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my gratitude to the Somalian government and to the Kingdom of Lesotho. I recognize His Majesty and the African Development and all the significant partners here this afternoon for your mobilization and the participation to the event of this afternoon. That is testament to your commitment to advancing the cause of nutrition. Together with climate change, we have to build up resilience on the African continent. Our talk of this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, on the integrating the nutrition finance and the climate change strategy is of utmost importance for our continent. We meet today at the crossroad of different ways because the impact of climate change raises huge challenges, mainly for health. And as a commissioner, I know I'm aware of the impact on the health issues, because if you do not have a proper meal, if you don't eat healthy food, you are not healthy. I would also like to recognize the necessity of adaptation and to build a resilience among our population to enable our communities to be healthy, more specifically by integrating those strategies to the issue of nutrition in our strategies for the well-being of our population. Climate change, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, is a threat. They are a threat. They have been a threat for decades. I remember when I was a kid in 1973, there was a big drought in East Africa, and it had an impact on the health of the population. And almost all the countries are now impacted by it. Let's take the case of Sahel. I come from Sahel, and we know how this drought, desertification, and also floodings impacted. Not to forget the Horn of Africa. Also remember, at that time, people got mobilized for my country, adoption, for Ethiopia. So you know that no region of African continent does not suffer from these floods and drought. I would like us to be committed to advancing our work to overcome the challenge. There are enough talks. Now we have to be concrete. And by shifting from this commitment, this pledge, to concrete actions, that's how we are going to change our societies and build this Africa we want, with people, with healthy people. How can we reach this objective? I'm going to highlight 2 points. First, we need to have a comprehensive approach integrating the financing of nutrition in a general way. And our strategy, we also have to recognize that the issue of climate change is not only an environmental issue. It also has an impact on health, as I said it, and well-being of our population, not without forgetting the impact on economic development. To realize this integration and have this Africa, as you wanted, well-nourished, and our Agenda 2023 mentions everybody should be included. Government, societies, civil society organizers, and today I would like to add private sector. Private sector needs to commit as well to set up strategies and make efforts which have an impact, so we leave nobody on the side of the road. So we have to find an innovative approach in the funding mechanism of nutrition, which should be sensitive to the issues of climate change, as I said. Private sector, governments, we all need to work together. Everybody knows we cannot ignore the investment in wealth. That's because in research, because if we do not carry out research, we shall never reach our goals of financing. And everything goes together with training. We need to train the stakeholders so that they will answer to these problems. A resilience of our population, we need to go through the strengthening, the skill building and training, and also encourage our populations to be trained, to get trained, so that we can properly feed them. And this is within our reach, because we've got everything: land, phosphates, water. We have everything to produce quality food on the African continent. Research is really important if we wish to reduce hunger and malnutrition on the continent. And I would like to add, for women and girls, today we realize that young girls have difficulties on a menstrual
monthly basis.
On a monthly basis, they have an impact on, that should be also added to our strategy. My fourth action, I say, you will have to strengthen the skills of the people, but we also need a transfer, because being well trained is important, but we also need to train others if we wish to reach our goals. And I visited a lot of countries on the African continent, and we have experiences to share. We have good actions in some countries. We need to share good practices. We need to share. I would like to remind you that last September, heads of state and governments organized a summit on this question. A declaration was done, and we agreed to have on a two-year basis a summit on this issue. It's important. I would like to call to all of you to support Africa in this fight, because we are far more impacted as Africans than the other continents. Even though we are not the biggest polluter, we don't contribute the most to the destruction of the ozone layer. So you have to support the African continent to implement this declaration and build a strong commitment of Africa so that can also contribute, so that impacts do not go beyond what we are experiencing now. As we are gathered here today to think about this issue, I would like to shift to action, because together we can also prevent and manage the disaster due to climate change and give our population the possibility of accessing quality food. That's a few words I wanted to share with you, and I wish fruitful talks. And please, we need commitments, action to reach the goals. And as for me, as Commissioner for Health, you can count on me, on my support, on my commitment, because we are going to build together the Africa we want by leaving nobody on the side of the road, and more specifically women and girls who make the most part of the African population. Thank you for your commitment.
Merci beaucoup, Votre Excellence.
Thank you, Excellency, for your participation.
We are certainly moving in the right direction, and now I'd like to call on another one of our dignitaries who are here with us this afternoon to give opening remarks as well. At this time, I would like to call upon His Excellency, the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation for the Federal Government of Somalia, the Honorable Ahmed Nunau. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, Madam Commissioner, Her Excellency, Ms. Minata, the Professor Mahao, the Minister of Energy, representing His Majesty King Letsi III of the Kingdom of Lesotho, Your Excellency, my colleague, the Minister of Livestock, Your Excellency, Deputy Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation, Ms. Sahra, Dr. Martin from the African Development Bank, Ms. Afshan Khan of Sun Movement Coordinator, Your Excellencies, all protocols duly observed. On my behalf and on behalf of the federal government of Somalia, I'm delighted to welcome you to this very important event. At the onset, I would like to recognize and appreciate our co-organizers, the African Union Nutrition Chairperson, Champion, the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, and leaders for nutrition and partners. Climate change, as you know, is a major challenge for Africa as it affects the food security, nutrition, and livelihoods of millions of our people. Climate change is one of the key drivers of hunger, and as it causes recurrent droughts and floods in many parts of our continent. And also it causes crop failures, livestock losses, and internal displacement, which is now more pronounced in the latest development in Somalia. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa faces a disproportionate level of climate risk despite emitting less than 4% of the global emissions. Pursuing rapid, resilient, and inclusive growth is the best form of climate adaptation. Incorporating nutrition concerns into the climate finance framework offers numerous advantages. Climate change impacts and risks are becoming increasingly compounded and challenging to manage. Over 2 billion individuals face micronutrient deficiency. Out of this, 828 million people are undernourished, and a further 676 million suffer from overweight. Child and maternal malnutrition currently rank in the top 10 contributors to death and disease, specifically in women and children, with 6 of the top 10 causes being diet-related. Climate change exacerbates existing tensions and competition over scarce resources such as land and water among different communities in different regions of the world. This leads to violent clashes, internal displacement, insecurity, which in turn leads to more susceptibility to nutrition and livelihood crisis. The burden of malnutrition is exacerbated further by extreme climate changes and remains pressing challenges in Africa, particularly in countries like Somalia, which significantly impedes progress toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, especially the SDG 2, which focuses on the eradication of hunger and malnutrition by the year 2030. The latest Democratic Health Survey conducted in 2020 indicates that 28% of children under the age of 5 are affected by chronic malnutrition, which more than 10% are wasted. According to the Global Nutrition Report, Somalia is on track to meet only 2 of the 13 nutrition and nutrition-related NCD targets, which are childhood overweight and exclusive breastfeeding. The causes of malnutrition in Somalia are largely multi-dimensional and calls for collaboration of a comprehensive response involving all relevant sectors and stakeholders. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, climate change threatens the rich and the diverse flora and fauna, which provide essential services such as pollination, soil fertility, and carbon sequestration. It also affects the marine life and fisheries, which are vital sources of food and income for many coastal communities. The federal government of Somalia has demonstrated its commitment in addressing the issue of malnutrition, food systems, and climate change by taking a number of steps that will, in the near future, be very effective in tackling this problem. Ladies and gentlemen, to just share with you some data in Somalia indicating the devastating effect of climate change on the nutrition outcomes of the country, the latest 2023 analysis by the government and in partnership with the Food Security and Nutrition Analysis Unit paints a stark picture of the malnutrition crisis in Somalia. Between just January and March 2023, nearly 5 million people are grappling with acute food insecurity. Of this, 1.5 million individuals are in emergency phase, and a staggering 96,000 are in the catastrophic phase. Critical levels of acute malnutrition persist across the country, affecting our most vulnerable, that is our children. Throughout this year, 2023, approximately 1.8 million children will suffer from acute malnutrition, including nearly 500,000 who are expected to be severely malnourished. These figures that just I mentioned paint a somber, is grim picture and is a somber reminder of the challenges we face and the need to sustainably tackle them. The drivers of this burden are multifaceted and multi-dimensional, with 5 consecutive seasons of below average to poor rainfall and a likely 6th season of drought, high food prices, conflict, insecurity, disease outbreaks, all worsening the crisis. Despite our collective efforts to provide humanitarian assistance, funding levels of food assistance remain inadequate, and sometimes they came too late, leading to projected increase of 1.5 million people in crisis or even worse. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the federal government of Somalia reaffirms its dedication to playing a strategic role in the global energy transition. Our participation in the Global Pledge is a clear indication of our aspiration to drive transformative change, not only within our borders, but across the global landscape. We are eager to collaborate with international partners to ensure the realization of a sustainable, efficient, inclusive, and equitable access to good nutrition for the future for all. Finally, I would like to thank once again our co-organizers for this very important event. I thank you all.
And thank you, Your Excellency, for painting such a real and relevant picture of just why this message is so important. Thank you once again. And for the final remarks, I'm very pleased to invite to the stage the Honorable Professor Nkpasa Mahao, Minister of Energy for the Kingdom of Lesotho. He is here representing His Majesty King Letsie III, and he is also an AU nutrition champion. Thank you so much for being here. Please come forward to deliver your opening statements.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Program Director. It is indeed an honor and singular privilege for me to represent His Majesty King Letsie III, who is also the African Union Champion for Nutrition. I'm therefore going to read on his behalf the speech titled From Commitment to Action, Integrating Nutrition Financing in Climate Change Framework. Allow me to, first of all, pay my respect to His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister, Federal Republic of Somalia, representatives of the UAE at this summit, Her Excellency Manita Sissoumi Samate, Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development at the African Union Commission, representatives of donor partners here present, distinguished guests, esteemed leaders, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to stand before you as the African Union Nutrition Champion, addressing this distinguished assembly on the sidelines of COP28 in Dubai. The COP28 climate conference is taking place when climate change is a key driver of malnutrition worldwide. Now, more than ever before, urgent actions are imperative, given the staggering reality we currently confront. Approximately 800 million people worldwide are grappling with food insecurity, and an even larger population faces alarming nutrition deficiencies. In Africa, 84.1 million children below 5 years are facing various forms of malnutrition. In addition, 278 million Africans are not able to access enough food to meet their daily minimum dietary energy requirements. The impact of climate change on vital food crops, exacerbated by drought and floods, poses a severe threat to global nutrition security. The risk of hunger and malnutrition could surge by 20% by 2050 if the global community fails to effectively mitigate and prevent the adverse effects of climate change. Esteemed delegates, the African Union is fully committed to finding lasting solutions to address and reverse the scourge of food and nutrition insecurity. Today, I present a pivotal position paper titled From Commitment to Action, Integrating Nutrition Financing in the Climate Change Framework. This position paper calls upon African leaders to prioritize the strategic utilization of climate finance to bolster food systems that are not only robust and healthy, but also sustainable and equitable. Africa, with its heightened vulnerability to climate change, is grappling with a spectrum of climate-related shocks, presenting formidable challenges to food security, clean water access, and overall health outcomes. It is paramount to adopt comprehensive strategies that seamlessly integrate climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and nutrition interventions to ensure that the well-being and resilience of communities contending for climate-related malnutrition challenges in Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the African Union has articulated various commitments under Africa Agenda 2063, notably the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Program, CAADP, with a steadfast commitment to ending hunger and halving poverty by 2025. The continent has also established the African Common Position on Food Systems. However, these commendable commitments face formidable global challenges, chief among them being climate change. It is crucial to emphasize that transitioning towards sustainable, climate-resilient, and healthy diets not only mitigates health and climate change costs, but also fortifies food security in the face of climate-induced challenges. The African Union recognizes the imperative for comprehensive action to combat climate change and promote resilient development. Hence, the following recommendations are put forth. First, political leaders must ardently champion the cause of nutrition-sensitive investment, influencing resource allocation and engaging international partners in fundraising efforts. Secondly, high-level political leaders are urged to foster collaboration and coordination among stakeholders, including government, civil society, academia, and the private sector. Thirdly, leaders are urged to champion the generation of robust evidence on the intricate links between climate change, food systems, and nutrition outcomes is pivotal for informed policy and investment decisions. Fourth, we call upon leaders to incorporate nutrition in climate financing instruments such as the Green Climate Fund by seamlessly integrating nutrition considerations into their investment frameworks, prioritizing projects that significantly impact nutrition outcomes. Fifth, we call upon leaders to strengthen the capacity of policymakers to understand the nuanced connections between climate change and nutrition. This must be enhanced through comprehensive training programs and knowledge-sharing platforms. In conclusion, these recommendations are poised to galvanize stakeholders towards incorporating nutrition into climate financing frameworks, fostering sustainable development, climate resilience, and markedly improving nutrition outcomes. Let us collaboratively work towards a future where climate finance becomes a powerful catalyst for positive change, ensuring a healthy, sustainable, and equitable future for all. It is my distinct honor to launch this pivotal position paper, and I am earnestly calling upon each one of us to unite in implementing these recommendations, thereby realizing the well-nourished citizens envisioned in Agenda 2023. I thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And we will hear from the Prof once again later in the program when it's time for the official launch of the position paper. Thank you very much, sir. So moving right along, it is now time to go to the panel session of today's program. And to set the scene for the panel will focus on the need for Africa to speak with one voice when it comes to integrating nutrition policies in the climate change financing framework. So before I call on the panelists, I'd like to invite, and we're very fortunate to have her with us this afternoon, Ms. Ashfaq Khan, coordinator of the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement. Ms. Khan works with the 65 Sun countries and Indian states that lead the Sun's initiatives to achieve a world free of malnutrition in all of its forms by 2030. Ms. Khan, may I please invite you forward to present an overview of the position paper, which will be launched much later in the program. Thank you very much. Let's please welcome her as she comes forward to give an overview.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. It's truly an honor to join you today. I'd like to extend my warm appreciation for Madame Samate, for the Excellencies present from the Somali government, and for the representative, His Excellency Professor for the Excellency the King of Lesotho, who leads on the African Leaders for Nutrition. The first thing I'd like to say is that this climate position paper from African leaders is pivotal to set the stage for what Africa would like to see from the multilateral community, from bilateral partners, and the rest of the world for clearly setting priorities. I think these priorities have been very clearly laid out by the professor, but I did want to come back to a few key things. What we've seen in the continent, and for those of you who know the Sun movement, the strength of the Sun movement lies in the nationally led and nationally developed national nutrition plans. Those national nutrition plans have already identified priority investment areas that are clear in terms of what needs to be done to tackle malnutrition. So there are key interventions in a multi-sectoral approach that includes primary health care, includes social protection, includes agri-food systems, and water and sanitation. These are all present in the African Leaders paper as well. The second thing we've clearly seen is that climate action now requires a much better series of investments. And the impact on climate has been far more, the impact of climate has been far more evident in the subcontinent than anywhere else on the planet. And you can see that from the recent evidence of floods and drought that have been spoken to. You can see that in the soaring rates of malnutrition that we've seen as a result of acute malnutrition due to conflict, displacement, and climate. Lastly, I would say the research and the evidence that is coming up also demonstrates very clearly that there are solutions that are available for the subcontinent, and those are very clearly articulated in the African Leaders paper as well. I would say a couple of key things that come as pivotal. One is the political will, and the fact that the African presidents and the African Leaders for Nutrition have put out this position paper is the first port of call. The second, I would say, is the recognition that climate and nutrition and health brought together in an articulation, and I was very clear to see how many members of the African continent had signed the declaration, both to support health and the Emirates Accord on food systems. Because I think nowhere better than in the continent comes clearer the impact and the intersection of climate and nutrition. The second thing I would say is that there are a host of very practical examples of what has been done. And some of those are very clearly articulated in the Africa strategy as well. We know that there's a clear move to strengthen the NDCs, and those national development contributions have outlined tangible steps on what can be done vis-a-vis nutrition in particular, and integrating those more solidly based on some of the research data and evidence that is coming through is pivotal. The other piece I would say is that the regulatory environment is also going to be a very important element. And the Africa Leaders for Nutrition paper has very clearly put forward what systems change needs to happen to ensure that the right regulatory environment is in place for business, for others to really invest in nutrition in a meaningful way. And this is where the Commission and some of the setting of the standards and the integrated approaches becomes so key. So private sector, civil society, research, government leadership, all coming together around a unique agenda that's set by Africa with clear investment targets. And there I would say what's also very clear is that despite the clear connection that all of the speakers before me have spoken to, only 3% of green climate funds currently target nutrition and interventions. And that has to change. And there has been a very clear call in the paper from the African Leaders for Nutrition of a need for greater investment. Now, what's needed to get to that is also explicitly clear. We see a number of vertical funds that don't always take the comprehensive approach that we've been so privileged to hear about today from previous speakers. So the links between health, the links between climate, the links between nutrition, social protection, climate adaptation, and climate mitigation. Those need to come together, and the Green Climate Fund really has to look at nutrition as one of the means to better reduce the impact on climate on population. So I would see a real call, and I'm hoping at the next African Leaders for Nutrition that there will be a call to see the reduction of stunting in particular, but acute malnutrition as well, as was clearly pointed out by our leader from Somalia, as being one of the vehicles for climate adaptation. We cannot have the right investment in Africa's future if we're not able to adequately feed the population and adequately address the health and future of children of this continent. So for me, the investments that are made for the Green Climate Fund, and I think the call to action that has been so explicitly made by the African Leaders paper, points to the need for adequate investment in nutrition, and that right now the balance needs to be readdressed. We see the bulk of the funds coming from largely bilateral donors or UN agencies or domestic budget imperatives. And while domestic budgets are important, they are one part of a solution for an overall financing architecture that needs to look at a comprehensive approach that looks at the Green Climate Fund as well as the Global Environment Facility. So just to say lastly in closing, I am very happy as the Sun Movement coordinator to be part of the framework that has been put forward for the Africa Leaders for Nutrition. With the UN agencies, civil society, African governments, we stand united to really bring forward the changes that are needed and create the space, as many have said, to focus adequately on women and girls, on children as priority investments as the human capital for the future, and encourage the private sector to come in, co-create, co-invest in what's needed for the agri-systems and food systems transformation to be climate smart, nutrition sensitive, and people positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Khan, for excellently and succinctly laying down the context for the panel discussion. So now that we have the context, let's now probe a bit deeper into the theme for today's event. So I would like to now call on the esteemed panelists to make their way forward here on stage. First of all, I'd like to call on Dr. Mohamed Abdi Farah. Please come forward. Special Advisor on Food Systems and Nutrition to the Federal Government of Somalia. Let's please give them an applause as they come forward. Thank you very much, sir. He's also a member of the Health Systems Global System and also the Sun Movement Somalia National Coordinator. Next, I would like to call on the Honorable Jeremy Lisuba, Member of Parliament in the Republic of Congo, also Deputy Judge on the country's High Court of Justice. Thank you very much, Honorable, for joining us. We have Dr. Namukolo Kovic, the Director General's Representative to Ethiopia for the International Livestock Research Institute, as well as the Regional Director for East and Southern Africa for CGIAR. Thank you so much, Dr. Kovic, for being here. Then we also have Dr. Alok Ranjan. He is the Director of Programs and Investments for Power of Nutrition. Dr. Ranjan, please come forward. Is he not here with us? Okay, he's not here with us. Once again, a round of applause for these panelists. So let's start right away. Dr. Farah, I'd like to begin with you. You serve as the national coordinator for the Sun Movement in the Federal Republic of Somalia, of your country, and you also worked as the Director General of your country's Ministry of Health and Nutrition and Human Services. So from your perspective, sir, can you tell us how can African countries best communicate the need and their strategies for prioritizing nutrition into the incorporation of the larger framework for climate change? If you can use the mic so that they can interpret. Yes, the hand mic, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for the audiences and the representatives from different countries, at the same time from African Union and African Development Bank. And I really recognize the presence of the federal ministers from Somalia and also the ministers from the southwest state of Somalia, the state minister, and the Minister for Environment. And coming to the question, in fact, it is an opportunity for Africans, at the same time a challenge, to have a burden of climate change that negatively affects the livelihood, the outcomes of nutrition, the health, and the economy development of the continent. It's really clearly mentioned in the paper that's been launched today that there is a profound effect of climate change on the nutritional indices of the African continent. And it doesn't leave any sector of all, including the production sector, which is agriculture, livestock, fisheries, protection sector, health, and nutrition sector. And it equally affects all countries without respecting the political boundaries that we consider to be unbreachable most of the times without legal effects. Climate change has all those effects and hindered the continent from realizing and reaching the Millennium Development Goals, and is now on the path of the continent to the realization of the SDGs. In that context, Africans and African leaders should have the sense that if the issue is not only a country, it's a continent or bigger than a continent, what could be the position of the African leaders to communicate that devastating effect correctly, but also context specific to those who can do something about it. We're not leaving that Africa is the least contributor to gas emissions, and it's the least developed of all the continents, and that the effect of the climate change is actually coming from the other part of the world. This burden should not be only left for Africa. It should not be only be an issue of Africa, and our leaders need to clearly articulate that in front of all the other stakeholders that involve in climate change. The adaptation, the mitigation, and accessing the finance for climate is not an issue of one country to address. I think the African Union is the lead agent now to become the voice of Africa, and Africans should lie behind and put their weight onto the position of the African Union to bargain and negotiate for more funds, to negotiate for more programs and projects, and more to advocate for more expectations, mitigations, early warnings, not waiting for effects to come, and then we deal with the results. We know that there are a lot of forums and systems to be used to speculate the effect of the climate change and what can be the devastating results of that. So Africans should come together, should form their voices around one articulated and well-framed statement to say that we are not the ones causing the emission. We are not the ones who are leading all those effects that are happening around the world, but we are the ones who are bearing the devastating effect of it. In that context, the world would understand and should understand that Africa should not be left alone to deal with effects that it has not contributed into. And this is what clear communication needs to come from our African leaders, African countries, our social and also political movements, and all of us should realize one day that Africa would not be the only continent that is bearing the effect and also contributing the least, but should benefit from whatever finances and resources allocated for the climate change effects. The outcomes is not only a capital effect, it's life, it's malnutrition, it's death. It is not attaining the potential of growth. It's not attaining the potential of economic development. It is not attaining all the potential that the green Africa continent has. So we should have that one voice which says, this time is the time of action. This time is the time to put ourselves in front of this challenge and face it. So Africans have the opportunity, as I said, but also have the biggest challenge to deal with. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So Dr. Farah makes a very poignant call for Africa to speak with one voice. Thank you very much. And now, Honorable Lisuba, as a member of parliament, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. What can policymakers like yourself do? What role do you all play in pushing forward this agenda, especially from a country level, also at a regional level?
Yes, thank you so much. And good afternoon, everybody. So, as you know, the mandate of a parliamentarian tends to focus on the national level and even the regional level, sub-regional level. So I'll very much focus on that. And in answering your question, I'd like to focus on three aspects that not only speak to, yes, ensuring that nutrition is adequately considered in climate finance, but also aimed at addressing some of the reasons why this has not been the case, and we've struggled to ensure that nutrition is taken into account. So the first aspect I'd like to raise is ensuring that there is a common understanding of what these concepts are, what the linkages are, like Dr. Khan said, and what the stakes are, which we all understand in this room where we are essentially preaching to the choir. But beyond these rooms, the understanding is not the same. So I'm also a member of the African Food Systems Parliamentary Network, a group of parliamentarians who are trying to build that understanding, that common understanding of food systems. And to me, the starting point has to be food systems, because I see food systems as being at the nexus of all these agendas we are talking about. When we're talking about climate change, when we're talking about nutrition, when we're talking about livelihoods and SDGs, food systems are very much at the heart of these issues. And it is a way for us to build a common understanding around these. The second aspect is the linkages. What are the linkages between nutrition and climate change? You know, there's a lot of research, and I'm sure you're all familiar with it, that talks about the stresses that climate change are going to induce on the productivity, the diversity, and the resilience of our food systems. And it's important that policymakers and every stakeholder involved understands this. There are questions in terms of the effects of climate change on nutrient availability. So it's going to be harder to achieve those nutritional outcomes as climate change gets worse. So all of these questions need to be properly understood by the policymakers and by stakeholders at large in order for the, the interventions to be properly targeted. And another aspect in this regard relates to the simple understanding that, again, we've all reflected here, which is that addressing these issues systemically, understanding what these interventions are that can both address questions of nutrition as well as issues of climate change and climate resilience can not only help mitigate some of the negative effects that we are facing, but also reinforce some of the positive effects. So what do I mean? And this brings me to the second area that I want to focus on, which is identifying opportunities and advocating for actions that have potential for systemic impact or multiplier effects. So there are very specific initiatives that can address these issues collectively. One which I'm sure many, particularly the ministers who are here, are familiar with, is the question of the silo mentality that often exists within our governments. So today you have, for example, in my country, Congo, you have the Minister of Environment who deals with questions of climate change. Minister of Agriculture deals with questions of agriculture. Minister of Health dealing with questions of nutrition. Minister of Commerce dealing with issues of commerce. And the reality is that they very rarely, seldom talk to each other. They often have their own agendas and they pursue them in different directions. Now, sometimes, yes, there is coherence, but more often than not, there is a duplication of efforts, and sometimes there's even contradictory efforts that are carried out. It's important that we change this. It's important that we recognize that this is one same conversation that we need to be having within our member states. And so as a parliamentarian, one of the things that we hope to achieve through our work is to bring all these different ministries and these different stakeholders to the table to have the same conversations. I think that's a vital aspect. A second dimension in terms of identifying these opportunities relates to these cross-cutting multiplier effects policies. So we've talked about school feeding programs. There's also a program that was carried out by our partners in the UN system, which relates to green classes. This is something we're hoping to revive in my country because it relates to having in each school a module, an installation, let's call it a small garden, where students can come and learn. They can come and learn about agriculture, but they can also come and learn about nutrition. They can come and learn about environmental preservation. And the ability to instill some of these messages and teach students from that age is very important, not only because it raises their consciousness, but it's also a way of reaching deeper into the community because they go home and speak to their parents, sensitize their whole communities. And these are there are many examples of such actions that can address multiple points in these issues that we're discussing. I know we're short on time, but I want to talk also about investing in data and information systems, weather information systems that are a key adaptation measure to climate change and that are going to help our farmers better anticipate some of the challenges that climate change are going to impose. And data shows that focusing on these kinds of initiatives has a multiplier effect with significantly larger benefits than there are costs. The same can be said of agricultural advisory services, and this needs to perhaps be reinforced with a much stronger nutrition component so that when farmers are given advice about how they should produce, how they should organize their production, what inputs to use, they should also better understand nutrition, and that's possible to spread these messages, and this can have a very positive impact. There are many such examples. The last one I want to raise.
The very last one, yes.
Okay, so there's clearly a lot more to say. The 1 acre fund which is a very promising initiative that I believe the African Development Bank is supporting, speaks to providing micro-insurance for producers and building a system that not only creates access to finance, access to markets, but also helps to build the resilience of producers. So these are some of the interventions that we can focus on.
That's called the 1 Acre Fund.
The 1 Acre Fund.
Fund, okay.
Yes. Now, I'm going to go very quickly. I apologize. There's really a lot that I wanted to say today. The final aspect in terms of multiplier effect and identifying these specific initiatives relates to finding ways to make domestic financing, domestic resources work. I know, and my esteemed colleague panelist said we need more. And of course, we're very short of reaching the needs in terms of financing. But we need to also make what little resources we have work better. Work better not only in terms of making sure that these investments are as efficient as possible, but also ensuring that we use these investments to open up new opportunities. So that's developing capacity in terms of data collection, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, accountability, even compliance to ESG standards that are going to allow our countries to better access some of the funds, private and public, that are available. And the final thing, which speaks directly to the role of parliamentarians, I won't go into too many details, but just simply say that once we have taken all these other things into account, then it's about driving the appropriate policy, legislative, and budgetary changes that are going to ensure that all of these different aspects are taken into account, all of these opportunities are seized, and that our countries are walking in the same direction, having the same conversation, and addressing all these problems as systemically and as comprehensively as possible. Thank you very much.
Let's bring Dr. Kovic into the conversation. I'm very eager to tap into your technical expertise as well. Can you add on to some of the recommendations, innovative strategies that the Honorable has mentioned, also from a regional level, as you represent Eastern and Southern Africa for CGIAR?
Yes, certainly. I think a lot has been said, but I would like to focus on opportunities that present right now that climate funding can go towards assisting. We know that nutrition and health are really barometers of whether our food systems are delivering what they should be delivering. So poor nutrition simply means our food systems are not working, and not working either because of climate or whatever. So our interventions to address climate need to address the links between agriculture, food systems, and nutrition. There are multiple areas of investments that are open right now. At least 42 countries in Africa have responded to the UN Food Systems Summit by submitting country transformation pathways. Those pathways try to address linkages of making our food systems deliver for nutrition. So already they are a specific entry point for investment from climate financing. There, one of the first things that we can do tomorrow is begin to synthesize all the evidence that we have already generated that can contribute to that resilience, contribute to the interventions that actually are needed by specific contexts. This is information we already have that we simply need to galvanize. So that's one area where tomorrow I would invest if somebody gave me climate financing today. The second would be investing on coordination. Food systems have multiple actors, and we all need to point in the right direction. The fact that the transformation pathways were written to be informed by a common vision works to our advantage, because then what it means, any investment that comes in, we need to make sure that what we do actually contributes to that common vision. If it is a trade-off, you will know because you are not contributing to the common vision. So investing in coordination, making sure that the different actors align is a key. And in there includes the parliamentarian issue that you raised, providing information, training. And I would even go as far as saying, let's push the boundaries. we don't target only the ones that are in government, actually target all the political parties, so that the next lot that comes into government already come equipped.
They're not lost.
They're not coming,
yes.
Now we are starting from scratch.
Sure.
So that's, I think, worthwhile investing in. Then the third thing would be, while we are busy galvanizing the knowledge that we already have into programs that are already ongoing in countries, we then invest in what else? How do we push now boundaries? And that's now additional research that needs to come on board to help. And then, of course, there's the monitoring and evaluation that needs to come with those transformation pathways. And we must link the NDCs and how we are monitoring our progress towards that, link it to monitoring and evaluating food systems transformation. On the pull factor, we need now school feeding, hospitals, our other public procurement perspectives that can actually create a market for those interventions that we put in place. Crop, livestock, mixtures of practices that also contribute to soil health. In doing that, dealing with the carbon issues and emissions as well, increasing productivity. But to increase that demand for those foods, then we bring on board the food-based dietary guidelines. Again, here, multiple countries are busy trying to develop those. Together with, if you take those guidelines into the schools, into how we procure for hospitals, into how we procure for prisons and others, we can draw, because often what we find is farmers are not able to get access to markets, but we can create those markets, the pull factor for markets, by looking at this public procurement perspective. And so I want to finish off by saying there's a lot that is happening on the African continent that we can invest climate funding in. At Africa, others have said, we have bared the brunt of the climate crisis. And it's not like governments have just been sitting there watching. People are trying to put in place interventions here, interventions there. Those are the investments that we can do tomorrow already in what we are already trying to do. And the country food systems transformation pathways, very strongly linked to the Sun movement as well. Those are already an opportunity that is there on the books for us to invest in. We don't have to wait. We can invest in that tomorrow and then continue looking for solutions for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I hear you saying, recognizing the available opportunities now, tapping into those opportunities, investing in coordination between the actors and stakeholders, also strengthening the existing programs that are on ground, as well as investing in education as well, just to make sure that that's not forgotten. Thank you so much for these initiatives. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, we don't have time for a second round of questions, unfortunately, so let's please thank our esteemed panelists. Thank you very much. May please exit the stage. So much to talk about, never enough time. So at this time, we want to transition to the next part of the program, which is the official launch of the position paper. So we have to be very quick because I know we don't have too much time left. So at this time, I would like to call on the professor representing the King of Lesotho to come forward to make the remarks for the opening and the presentation of this position paper. So please come forward, Professor. And also, I would like to call on some dignitaries to support you as you are launching this. If I can please call upon and recognize Her Excellency Khadija Mohammed Al Mazumi, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change for the Federal Government of Somalia. If she's still here with us. Minister of Agriculture, please come forward. Honorable Ahmed Nuno, thank you very much, to support the launch of this position paper. If I can also call forward once again Her Excellency Minata Samate Sisuma. Thank you very much, Madam. If I can also finally call on the African Development Bank's division leader of the Agricultural Production Sustainability Research Division, Dr. Garba, once again. Thank you very much. And Professor, I'll let you to take it from here with the launch of the official paper.
Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. We have
End of the
slightly
translation.
modified the program for this important formal ritual. We're not going to go back into making speeches, just to declare that the paper that was read on behalf of His Majesty, together with the interventions that came before and after, and the panelists have given us food for thought and a sense of direction. And therefore, we are launching the position paper with the honorable dignitaries that stand before you this afternoon. And so the position paper has been launched. I do declare. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. You can access this paper on the website of the African Development Bank. Thank you so much. So at this time, I would like to call forward one of the partners of this occasion, Dr. Mercy Lungango of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. Dr. Lungango leads the foundation's efforts in child health and development under the Resilient Communities pillar in Africa. Can you please share your remarks as one of the partners of this remarkable work? Thank you very much.
Thank you, moderator. This is an exciting day. Royalties, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I'm delighted to participate in this event, which speaks to an issue that's very dear to my heart. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you know nutrition in Africa is a passion of mine. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the launch of this position paper on integrating nutrition financing into climate change framework. Congratulations and well done. This is a bold move that is long overdue and aligns with CIF's ambition in the Initiative on Climate and Nutrition, ICAN. Africa is the only region in the world where undernutrition has a stranglehold and is ever increasing. Climate change will make it even harder for us to end malnutrition on the continent. We know the data. His Excellency, the Honorable Minister for Agriculture from Somalia, already presented some of this data. We know that from the outbreak of the pandemic, more than 57 million people have had to deal with hunger. This increase is unacceptable. We need to act. At CIF, we're playing our part by building climate resilience into African food systems. At the global level, we're supporting advocacy to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. We are aware that Africa requires a more integrated approach to address undernutrition challenges in the context of climate change. The climate change framework, therefore, presents an important opportunity. The positioning of nutrition as an adaptation intervention can unlock nutrition financing in the climate change financing framework. But Africa needs to speak with one voice. This will require that we take collective efforts and support countries to integrate nutrition into their national determined contributions, NDCs, and other national policies and frameworks. CIF is committed to working with countries, many who are here today, to work with the African Leaders for Nutrition, ALNN, at the African Development Bank, to work with an African Union Commission, and to work with many partners seated here today to support this agenda. Let's join hands and make a real difference. Thank you very much.
We're now nearing the very end of the program, so at this time I'd like to call on Mr. George Ayuma, the coordinator of the African Leaders for Nutrition Initiative at the African Development Bank, to give us a summary of the key outcomes of this prestigious meeting.
Thank you, Moderator. Excellencies, all protocols observed. We have run short of time, so I will snapshot my summary. The connection between climate change and nutrition is evident. The speakers have highlighted it. Everybody now appreciates that we have a responsibility to take. We cannot leave the COP28 without ensuring that nutrition is part of the climate change financing framework, because some of the challenges and gaps that have been highlighted by our speakers revolves one, policies. So make sure all our NDCs, the national determined contribution, include nutrition as an adaptation intervention. That way, we can be able to unlock resources. Secondly, we need budgets. We cannot look for budget elsewhere without thinking about budgets that we have in our nation. So our nation must now prioritize and ensure that the nutrition intervention within the national determined contribution include budgets that we can now use to implement nutrition agendas in our countries. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, may I summarize that climate crisis is nutrition crisis. We cannot live without making sure that the reports of this COP28 include nutrition as an agenda. It must remain central to the conversation during the COP28. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellency, may I take the opportunity to invite the Agriculture Minister from Somalia to now close this event officially. Your Excellency.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are very much behind time, so I won't take much of your time again. All protocols observed. I would like to thank again all the participants, all the excellencies, all the speakers, the panelists, everyone who has made this event a success. Thank you very much. And secondly, my brother has summarized very well. We have all spoken, the speakers, the panelists. We know the challenges. We know the opportunities that exist. And we know what to do. And we know that we need a political commitment and leadership if we have to take nutrition seriously. And we know partnership is very important. We know collaboration is very important. There was a mention of us working in silos. The agriculture minister doing something, the health minister doing another thing. And these things need proper integration and proper collaboration and partnership at the national level, at the regional level, and at the global level. If we cannot do that, then we cannot achieve much. So we know that investment is much needed and urgently needed. And he said we cannot leave COP28 without including nutrition in finance, in climate finance. And that summarizes what we have been talking about, all this. So mine is just to say this was success, and I really want to thank everyone who has, really taken the time and made this event what it is today. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this event is now closed. I'd like to invite the dignitaries and honorables to please come forward for a group photo. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoons.